Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to talk about our Old Hickory tournament and how practice went, how the tournament went, and break down some of the baits that we used to catch the fish in this tournament. So practice started out, it was a little tough. The last time we were there, it was June and the fish were out on ledges. This time the fish were shallow and a little bit more spread out. There was a lot of shallow grass that the fish could use, and there was a lot of bait fish up in that shallow grass. It was really, really small bait fish that was in that grass, and a lot of those fish in that grass seemed to be shorts as well. But there was a few keepers mixed in here and there, and I really struggled to get on anything consistent. And the second day of practice, I finally found a creek that I could go into and flip some laydowns, and I wouldn't get a bunch of slime on my tube or whatever I was flipping. A lot of those places you'd flip a laydown and there was so much like slime and dying grass that it would mess up your bait and you couldn't present your bait correctly. So I finally found a creek that had a little bit less grass in it. It had some of the bank grass, but it didn't have as much of the dying grass around some of that wood and stuff that I wanted to fish. So I finally found an area that had that, and I was able to start getting some bites flipping a tube. I got one bite, and it was a keeper, like a nice 2.5 pounder. And then I watched another guy probably 50 yards from me that ended up catching another really nice one too. So then after that, I just left and I went to another bank that had some wood on it. So I flipped up to this log and one bit it and just kept swimming off to the left, and actually went like 20 feet to the left, and I was gonna shake it off, and it just kept swimming and swimming, and I decided he's not gonna let go of it. I might as well have fun and set the hook. So I caught that one, probably shouldn't have, but I did, and it was probably another 2.5 pounders. So at this point I have something that's a little bit more consistent. Earlier, like on day one and then the beginning of day two of practice, all the keepers that I caught were just on something random, and nothing made any sense. Now that I found these laydowns that had less of that scum on it and I could actually efficiently present my bait and I was getting bit, I had a little bit more confidence, so I ran around a little bit and looked for more areas like this. I was able to find a few areas, but not a whole lot. It was mostly in that one creek, and I was fishing a creek about 2 or 3 miles from takeoff, and it seemed to be working for me. So at that point, I decided that's where I was going to start in the tournament. I started on that bank. My co-angler caught 2 real quick, and it kind of settled me down. I was like, okay, well, there's some keepers here. We'll be all right. I just have to catch 1 keeper in order to make the BFL regional, and that was the main goal. The other goal that I had in mind that week was to beat Blake, and we traveled together all these tournaments. He was in 10th in the points. I was in 11th in the points, and I was only 6 points behind him. The goal is to beat him and to make the regional. So I started going down this bank, and my co-angler catches 2 really nice ones real quick, and I had missed one, and then I missed another, and then I missed another, and before you know it, I had all these bites that were just, they were hammering my tube, and I had a few that just would like swim off, but when I went to go set the hook, there wasn't anything there. And it was really frustrating because I didn't have a fish in the boat. I needed 1 keeper is all I needed to make the regional, and I couldn't get that keeper in the boat. So about 9:30 finally, it was about 3 hours into the tournament, I was just kind of covering some water with a crankbait, and I ended up catching one that like wedged itself, it wedged the bait into its mouth. It never actually got hooked, but I've never actually seen anything like it. It had the bait wedged between the bottom of its jaw and the top of its jaw, and never even had a hook in him. But got that fish in the boat. Then about 5 minutes later, I caught one flipping my tube, and I was settled down. I could just fish the way I wanted to fish. Pretty much flipped the tube the rest of the day, and I caught 3 more keepers doing that. Ended up with 4 keepers for 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Blake had 3 keepers, I think, for 5 something, and I finished 42nd. He finished 49th, which means I beat him by 1 point. So it was a pretty successful weekend. Obviously, we would have wanted to do better, but we beat Blake and we made the regional. So our 2 goals, we accomplished them. But now I'll break down some of the baits that I that I threw during the week. I threw like a spinnerbait or a chatterbait around some of that grass, but I never did that in the tournament because I didn't fish a whole lot of grass. I felt like the grass was very inconsistent. You could pull up to some stretches and not catch any, and then you could pull up to other stretches and you might catch one keeper out of it, but it wasn't consistent enough for me to do that in the tournament. But the majority of my damage came on a green pumpkin tube, and I throw that on either a 1/4 ounce or a 5/16 ounce weight, and I actually peg that as well, and I throw the trocar tube hook on that. But just a green pumpkin tube. Usually I dye the tails, but I didn't even dye the tails that week just because the water was a little clearer where I was fishing. I just flipped that around laydowns, fished it real slow. The fish seemed to be out on the tips of the laydowns. My co-angler caught some closer to the bank, but a lot of the fish that I was catching was kind of on the tips of the laydowns. I don't know if it was just deeper there or if they were just away from the tree more. I'm not sure. But another bait that I used a little bit to cover water in practice and in the tournament, I was throwing a Strike King KVD 1.5 in the citrus shad color. I caught a really big one on the first day of practice on this thing. It hit right by the boat, so I was pulling it in over a laydown that I didn't even know was there until I was like on top of it, and the fish hit right by the boat, and it was a big one. It was probably like a 4-pounder. And I tried running some stuff with this crankbait after that, and I couldn't do anything. And then obviously, like I said, the first keeper that I caught in the actual tournament was on this bait as well. And I was just going around a point, and I was in between laydowns, so I wasn't gonna just flip to the bank. I picked up something that I could put my trolling motor on high and cover down the bank, and it was just a rocky bank with some points as you're going into a creek, and I had one obviously eat this really good since it was wedged in between its jaw. I replaced the hooks on this with a Gamakatsu round bend treble, and this one here doesn't have it, but I replaced the front hook with a red treble hook as well. And I don't know if that helps much or does anything at all, but to me it gives them something to kind of zone in on and helps them get that bait a little bit better, I think. But maybe that's just in my head, but that's how fishing is. If it gives you confidence, you may end up getting more bites on it anyways. So the tube I threw on a 7-foot medium heavy rod, pretty much what I do most of my normal flipping on, I guess you would call it. Some of the heavier flipping I'll use heavier rods, and I threw a custom Pro reel with a 8.3 to 1 gear ratio, and that helps you really pick up line and get to those fish when they're swimming off. If you don't notice that they're swimming off right away, you can really reel in all that slack and pick up all that line so that you can get a good hook set into those fish. For my crankbait, I was using a 7-foot medium rod, and it's a wiggle wart, or it's a wart special rod. And I like this on some of my lighter crankbaits, or like obviously a wiggle wart or like a DT6 or anything like that. Smaller crankbaits that you can really throw out there and just work them back to the boat and feel pretty much everything. For my reel, I was throwing a 6/8 to 1 custom Lose light reel, and I was throwing that on 12-pound Berkeley fluorocarbon. Usually I throw my crankbaits on 10-pound, but when I'm fishing that shallower rock or shallow laydowns or something like that, I like to up it up to 12, and it kind of gives you a little bit more leeway whenever you're fishing around that heavy cover like that and getting the fish out or worrying about breaking any fish off. So that's the breakdown of how I caught my fish at Old Hickory. I hope it helps you out if you're going to Old Hickory, or if you're just wanting to fish a lake that's similar to Old Hickory and try and figuring out how to break down the lake. If you guys want to see more, check out my search video and my game day video of Old Hickory, and hopefully you guys can learn a thing or two. And if you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.